Hi, my name is Daniel. You could say I've aged 20 years in the past few days. There are some experiences on this earth that are almost too revolting to be put into words. But I just need to tell someone. So please forgive me for putting images in your head that most would fear to even dream of. I've worked in the service industry for my entire life, mostly kitchens, but I've done a bit of work as a barback or a porter when need be. It's a crazy industry, high turnover, terrible customers, irregular schedules, late hours, you know the deal. For all of that, however, there are still great coworkers, good tips, and a high energy environment that really makes you feel alive. At 25, however, I was starting to feel like my years in the industry were coming to an end. I was too tired all the time from having my sleep schedule messed up, and after COVID, the industry just wasn't as lucrative as it had been before. I was browsing online one morning, searching for jobs, when I stumbled upon an ad that looked promising. I should also mention that, even though I worked in the service industry, I've always had pretty crippling anxiety when it comes to social interaction. Something about small talk, simple everyday conversations, they just make me feel like I need to run away and hide. It's probably why I always worked in kitchens. You just don't need to talk that much or interact with anyone, you can just focus on your work. So when I saw this listing for an office job, I was thrilled. A cubicle, nobody around, perfect peace and quiet. The listing read, office job, administration role, $25 an hour, experience not a necessity, an office job, sure why not? I said to myself as I sent my information off to the email attached to the posting. I had sent off 2 applications so far, so I decided a break was in order. I opened a bag of chips and sat down on my couch to watch some Netflix. A few hours had passed when my phone rang, and my head snapped around to the sound. As I watched my phone ring, on the cushion next to me, 4 p.m., who calls someone this early? I said to myself as I raised a quizzical eyebrow to the phone. Hello, I said as I accepted the call and put it on speakerphone. Hi, is this Daniel? Came a pleasant sounding female voice from the phone. Yes, who is this? I answered. Hi Daniel, this is Claire. I work for the HR department of Walmart Inc. And I'm calling about your application that you sent in earlier today. She said cheerily. Oh right. What can I do for you? I asked. I'm just wondering if you had some time for a quick phone interview. Of course, ask away, I said, voice full of hope. I remember the interview being pretty standard. Name, address, phone number, social security number, that sort of thing. I had only just woken up and was kind of high, so my memory may not be perfect, but there was one question that made me uneasy. Would you say you're a focused person? Claire asked, at which I recoiled slightly. Focused on what? I asked. As in, are you able to focus on tasks for extended periods of time? Oh yes, absolutely. Well Daniel, that's all I've got. Do you have any questions for me? Sure, I chuckled. When do I start? How does Monday sound? Claire said, laughing slightly. I'll email you all the details. Welcome aboard. The call ended and I threw my phone back down on the couch inside. I did think it was a bit strange that they had hired me so quickly, but hey, $25 an hour is great. Who cares? I knew that kitchens hired very quickly as well, so I figured that maybe offices were the same. The weekend came and went. I had some drinks on Friday with my friends and bragged about the big boy job that I was going to start Monday. They all congratulated me and we had a few rounds of shots. I went out on Sunday to pick up some business casual clothing, which I had very little of. I grabbed a new, fancy-looking pair of leather shoes and admired myself in the mirror. My beard was a bit ratty, so I trimmed it up and thought I looked damn good. Wow, I clean up good, I said as I gave finger guns to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Monday came and I rose bright and early for the first time in years. I showered quickly, dressed, tucked my shirt in, and threw a tie around my collar. I poured a coffee into my thermos, grabbed the lunch I had made the night before, and jumped into my car, excited for new beginnings. Little did I know how foolish I would prove to be. I arrived at the address of the office, which was a drab brownish building in the commercial, industrial parks of the city's East End. Not nearly as appealing as the outside of a bar or a restaurant, but I suppose that offices don't need to look good. Well, first day of the rest of my life, let's do it. I said to myself as I adjusted my tie and walked in the front door. There was a desk in the front foyer with a middle-aged woman sitting behind it. She looked up as I entered and pushed her glasses up her nose. "Oh, you must be the new one," she said cheerily. "I'm Daniel, nice to meet you," I replied with my best customer service smile. "I'm looking for Claire, is she around?" "I'll call her for you, have a seat dear," the woman said, gesturing to a couch against the wall. She picked up the phone and had a brief conversation that I couldn't hear, and a minute or two later waved me back up to the desk. "She'll meet you on the 4th floor, just head up the elevator there," the woman said, pointing to a set of steel gray doors behind her. I did as I was bid and ascended to the 4th floor where a young, attractive blonde woman was waiting for me. I put on a big smile as I approached and offered my hand. "Daniel?" she asked, shaking my hand. "That's me, Claire. Yes, nice to meet you. Come along, I'll give you a short tour and show you to your desk." I followed close on Claire's heels as she showed me around the various parts of the office. It was all drab and gray, with humming fluorescent lights and gray carpeting everywhere. I was brought to my new cubicle and desk after about half an hour and spent the rest of the day learning what my job was going to be. It was basically just boring data entry, but I was okay with that. I met a few of my new coworkers and went home for the day. I returned to work the next day, somewhat lamenting that this job wasn't nearly as exciting as working in a kitchen, but the pay was much better and it was time for me to grow up. I was finally allowed to work on my own today and told to call my supervisor if I needed any help. I decided to organize my desk a bit before I set to work, lining up pencils and aligning my stapler just right. When I was checking through the top drawer of my desk, I happened across an old and crumpled piece of paper which I unfolded and smoothed out on my desk. I was confused at first as I read the list over, but my confusion quickly turned to dread as I started to read further. Here's what it said. "Hello, if you're reading this, I offer you my condolences and wish you the best of luck. I'm afraid you've been trapped in a terrible situation that is only survivable if you follow the list of rules that I will detail below. Make sure you never deviate from this list if you want to stay alive. Rule 1, never show up to work after 9 a.m. If you're going to be late, just call in sick. It's safer that way. Rule 2, every day at exactly 10:15, a local radio station will be heard playing from Steven's cubicle. Try not to listen. If you ever encounter Steven in the office and he asks if you've heard what Crash and Mars were talking about this morning, make sure you always answer no and get away from him as fast as possible. Rule 3, if you ever get called into Dave's office, never refuse to go and make sure you stay in the office until he's done speaking. Never ignore the summons and never leave the office before he is done. Agree to whatever he asks of you. Rule 4, never get drunk with Greg in the company truck at lunchtime, no matter what he says to convince you. If you do go, however, pray to whatever God you believe in, and remember Rule 3. Rule 5, if you must ever stop at Sharon's desk, do whatever you can to avoid making eye contact with the pictures of her kids. Rule 6, never go into the men's bathroom between 3:15 and 3:30. Rule 7, always have cash on you. If Carol ever asks you to contribute to buying a birthday cake or donuts, give her $5 and tell her that you're very busy with the Coventry account. She should leave you alone. Rule 8, never let Dave see that you have Microsoft Excel open. Rule 9, if Jack ever asks you how it's going, always reply "oh it's going" and leave the area while he's laughing. Do not reply with anything else to this question. Rule 10, have a list of excuses handy. If Kayla ever invites you to any event, work or otherwise, always decline, no matter what. If you follow these rules, you may just survive. Good luck. My hands were trembling as I set the paper back down on my desk. What have I gotten myself into? I thought as I held my head in between my hands. This must just be some kind of sick joke they play on the new guy. This must be a joke. It has to be, I thought. I figured there was only one way to know for sure if the rules were true or not. I had to break one. I fixed my resolve and read the list over a second time. Rule 8 seemed like the consequences might not be too bad. So I opened Microsoft Excel and rang Dave's extension. I was holding my breath as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Dan the man, what can I do for ya? Dave's voice echoed over the phone. Dan the man, this may be worse than I thought. I gulped in fear. Hey boss, I just had a quick question about some of the employee forms that I'm signing, wondering if I could get a hand. No need to call me boss. Old Dave will be right over, Dave said and hung up the receiver. I wiped the sweat from my brow with my tie as I heard Dave's footsteps plodding down the hallway towards me. It was now or never. I had to be brave. Alright, let's have a look-see, Dave said as he reached my cubicle. I could see his eyes focus for a brief moment on the Excel spreadsheet that was open over my shoulder, but quickly returned to the direct deposit form I was waving about. Oh, you will want to see Jeremy in accounting about all that money nonsense. He should be free today after 3:30 when he gets back from his usual break, Dave said, waving his hand dismissively. Alright, can do, I said, forcing a smile. How's your second day treating you, bud? Dave said, slapping my shoulder. Good, finally getting settled. I smiled. Good to hear, Dave started. Did I ever mention that I took a class about Excel? He said, pointing over my shoulder. No, I don't think you mentioned it, I said, feigning ignorance. Here, scoot over, I'll show you a few tricks of the trade, Dave said, waving me aside as he hunched over my computer. What followed was 45 minutes of Dave teaching me how to create Excel macros and small tips and tricks for the entering and organizing of data. I had to suppress the emotional reaction to the soul-rending agony that I was being subjected to, but logically, I knew my plan had worked. The list was real. My stomach dropped and my heart was racing, and I did all I could to prevent myself getting sick right there in the cubicle. Dave finally finished and patted me on the back, retreating towards his office. I took a series of deep breaths and tried to steady myself. I knew the list would come in handy, so I folded it up and tucked it into my pocket in the event I needed it. Safe to say I followed the list religiously that day and tried to leave my cubicle as little as possible, trying to lose myself in my work. 5 o'clock rolled around, but I remained at my desk for a few extra minutes, hoping that if I left late then, I wouldn't accidentally trigger any of the rules. I left a quarter after 5, and Dave waved at me from his office as I walked out. Hey, thanks for staying late, bud. Keep it up. I shuddered. I reached the front door of the building and sighed as I stepped outside, loosening my tie somewhat. I lit a cigarette and stood in the fresh air for a minute, enjoying the silence and stillness of the parking lot. I began to walk to my car, which was parked in the corner of the lot next to an unused dumpster. I leaned against my car door, finished my smoke, and tossed it on the ground, grinding it out under my shoe. I got inside my car and rubbed my face in exasperation. I turned the engine on and merely sat for a moment, letting the AC wash over me. It was then that I noticed a strange sound from my right, as if someone was trying to open the car door. I ignored it for a moment before it became too violent to be nothing. I looked to my right and beheld something straight from a horror movie. The dumpster lid was propped open and a huge black tentacle, dripping with some sort of red-green ooze, had slithered out of it and was trying to wrench my car door open. I screamed and slammed the car into reverse, backing halfway across the parking lot. The dumpster shook violently, and it seemed I had ripped a piece of the tentacle free. I slammed the car into drive and peeled off down the street as fast as I could safely go. I got home and yanked the sheet of rules out of my pocket. I flipped the page over where I saw that the list of rules continued on to the other side, and thought in stunned silence, how did I miss this? P.S. or Rule 11 or whatever, there's some weird Lovecraft monster thing that lives in the old dumpster in the parking lot. It's pretty harmless though, I think. I always took the bus. Anyway, good luck. Okay, that's not as bad as I thought, I said to myself as I heaved a sigh of relief. I fell into a fitful sleep and had nightmares of the office all night. I woke up early and rubbed my face. I was in way over my head, but I knew I had to persevere. I had to. This is what being an adult is about. And come on, the money is good. I can put up with a list of strange rules for a few months at least so that I can pay my bills off. I stopped at Tim Hortons on the way to work and picked up some breakfast. I got to the office early and parked an extra stall away from the dumpster, which rattled slightly as I got out of my car. I smiled and tossed the extra muffin I had bought into the dumpster and heard what I can only imagine was a metallic squeal of delight from the beast inside. I nodded my head to the dumpster and headed inside. I filled my coffee and got to my cubicle, bracing myself for the day ahead and going over the rules mentally, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. A few hours into my shift, I was startled by a voice behind me. Hey Daniel, the overly friendly Carol said from behind me. It's Jeremy's birthday tomorrow, and I thought we could all chip in a bit to get him a cake and a card. I knew what to do. Hey Carol, you bet. Just working on the Coventry account here, let me get my wallet. Ooh, Coventry, very important. I stared at my wallet in barefaced horror. Rule 7, I had broken Rule 7. I had put cash in my wallet for just this occasion, but in my ignorance, had spent it at Tim Hortons that morning. Oh, that's no problem, dear. I know you youngins don't carry cash on you these days. Carol smiled at me as the blood began to drain from my face. You sure? I asked in a shaking voice. Of course. I have a great story of when Dave forgot to chip in for Kayla's birthday, that old lout. Carol began, leaning against the wall of my cubicle. So, it was 2007, and I'd only been here for about 7 years. Or was it 8? It might have been 8. Steven, how long was I here in 2007 when Dave messed up Kayla's birthday? Anyway, sorry, so I had eaten some new cereal for breakfast that morning, so I was a little bit off, but Dave, you see, Carol's voice faded into a murmuring torrent that flowed in one ear and out the other. I hoped she wouldn't notice how pale I was. I can't believe I broke Rule 7. There truly are some fates worse than death. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.